Deep in the world's jungles, where the trees grow so thick that sunlight barely reaches the ground, there are places that don't appear on any map. Places where the normal rules don't seem to apply, where compasses stop working, where sounds play tricks on your ears, where entire civilizations have vanished without leaving a trace. These green mazes hold secrets much older than our history books, secrets that some say were meant to stay hidden. Stories passed down through generations speak of cursed ruins, of strange creatures seen only in glimpses, of something ancient that watches from the shadows between the trees. Tonight, we're going to explore these mysteries, not as campfire tales, but as real, unexplained phenomena that continue to puzzle scientists and explorers to this day. So get comfortable, grab a snack, dim the lights, and let's begin. Deep in the impenetrable rainforests of eastern Honduras, where the trees grow so close together their roots form a tangled web across the jungle floor, there exists a legend that has haunted explorers and locals alike for centuries. They call it La Ciudad Blanca, the White City, a lost metropolis said to be built of pale stone and filled with unimaginable treasures, but protected by a terrible curse. For generations, indigenous tribes spoke in hushed tones of a ruined city deep in the Mosquitia region, where stone carvings of strange half-human, half-monkey creatures stood guard over forgotten plazas and temples. Conquistadors from Spain searched for it in vain during the 16th century, lured by tales of golden artifacts and a civilization that vanished without a trace. Many who ventured too deep into that emerald wilderness never returned, their fates swallowed by the same jungle that kept its secrets so well protected. The modern story of the White City's discovery begins in 2012, when an intrepid team of archaeologists and filmmakers led by Steve Elkins decided to employ cutting-edge technology to solve this ancient mystery, once and for all. Using LiDAR, a revolutionary laser mapping system that can peer through dense forest canopy, they mounted an aerial survey of the Mosquitia region, an area so remote and inaccessible that much of it remains uncharted even today. What the LiDAR revealed was astonishing: clear geometric shapes and unnatural formations hidden beneath centuries of vegetation, unmistakable evidence of human construction. There were what appeared to be pyramids, plazas, irrigation canals, and an extensive network of roads connecting what could only be described as an entire lost civilization. The images showed not just a single settlement, but potentially multiple cities that had been lost to time, their existence preserved only in native folklore. 3 years later, in 2015, after extensive planning and preparation, a ground expedition finally pushed its way through miles of nearly impassable jungle to reach the coordinates revealed by the LiDAR scan. The journey itself was harrowing. The team battled flash floods, venomous snakes, and swarms of insects that seemed determined to drive them back. But when they finally reached the site, all hardship was momentarily forgotten in the face of their incredible discovery. Emerging from the dense foliage, they came upon a series of stone sculptures unlike anything seen before in the region. There were beautifully carved vessels, ceremonial seats, and most chillingly, numerous depictions of what appeared to be a simian-human hybrid creature with exaggerated features and a snarling expression. The indigenous guides immediately identified these as representations of the Dios Mono, the monkey god said to protect the ruins. As the archaeologists carefully documented their findings, they noted the unusual construction of the artifacts. The stonework showed remarkable precision in some areas, yet appeared almost crude in others, suggesting either a long period of occupation by different cultures or perhaps the influence of an unknown building tradition. The layout of the city itself defied conventional expectations of Mesoamerican urban planning, with structures arranged in patterns that seemed to follow no discernible logic or astronomical alignment. Even more puzzling was the discovery of numerous deep pits and circular depressions in the earth, their purpose completely unknown, but hinting at possible ceremonial or even defensive functions. Shortly after the expedition returned to civilization, several team members began developing mysterious symptoms. Flesh-eating ulcers appeared on their skin, later diagnosed as an unusually aggressive form of leishmaniasis, a parasitic disease transmitted by sandflies. However, the rapid progression and strange patterning of the lesions led some to wonder if there wasn't something more sinister at work. Indigenous elders nodded knowingly when hearing of these ailments, murmuring about the curse of the monkey god, and how the white city had always punished those who disturbed its slumber. Even today, the full extent of this lost civilization remains shrouded in mystery, its origins, purpose, and ultimate fate waiting to be uncovered by future expeditions brave enough to venture back into that green labyrinth. First, there's the eerie fungus that controls its hosts like a puppet. You don't need a horror movie to witness a true case of mind control. Just take a trip deep into the jungles of Brazil. Hidden beneath the leaves, you may find an ant gripping onto a vein of a leaf with its jaws locked tight. But this isn't just any ant. It's a victim of Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, the zombie ant fungus. Once this fungus infects a carpenter ant, it spreads through its body, hijacking its nervous system and forcing it to abandon its colony. Under the fungus's influence, the ant climbs a plant stem to a height of around 25 centimeters, right where the temperature and humidity are just perfect for fungal growth. Then, the ant bites down on the leaf and dies. But the horror doesn't stop there. The fungus continues growing, sending a stalk through the ant's head that eventually bursts open, releasing spores onto the colony members below. This cycle continues, spreading the fungal infection like an apocalyptic plague among the ants. Even more disturbing, scientists have found that the fungus doesn't take full control of the ant's brain. It bypasses it entirely, hijacking the muscles directly. That means the ant is still alive inside its own body but powerless to resist. Researchers have also discovered over 200 different species of cordyceps fungi, each one specializing in turning a different insect into a mindless husk. If you thought zombies were just fiction, think again. After considering such disturbing phenomena, you might find it hard to believe that trees could also have their own surprising abilities. A bizarre video of a breathing tree in Calgary, Canada, left social media in shock. The footage showed the ground rising and falling around the tree's roots, making it look as if the tree was inhaling and exhaling. While this phenomenon seemed supernatural at first, science provided a fascinating explanation. During a violent storm, heavy rainfall soaked the ground, loosening the soil's grip on the tree's roots. Meanwhile, strong winds battered the tree's canopy, transferring force down into the root system. The combination of these factors caused the ground to lift and fall, mimicking the rhythm of breathing. But while this was an extreme case, the truth is that forests do breathe, just in ways we often don't notice. Trees absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen through photosynthesis, making them essential to life on Earth. Even beneath the soil, billions of tiny microbes are at work, breaking down organic matter and releasing CO2 back into the air. In fact, the world's forests release around 30% of the Earth's CO2 through this process. And if you think this breathing effect is limited to trees, think again. Similar movements have been documented in peat bogs and wetland areas, where changes in water levels cause entire sections of land to shift and move like a living organism. Next time you step into the woods, remember, you're standing in a living, breathing system. But while these trees could truly breathe, there has also been a whale discovered in an unexpected place, one that probably doesn't breathe anymore. Imagine trekking through the dense Amazon rainforest, miles from the nearest ocean, only to stumble upon the massive corpse of a 36-foot-long humpback whale. That's exactly what happened in 2019 when researchers in Brazil found the beached giant lying 15 meters inland from the shore. Humpback whales are common in the Atlantic Ocean, but spotting one in the Amazon jungle is unheard of. The whale's body, weighing over 10 tons, showed no obvious signs of trauma or injury. This led to intense speculation about how it got there. One theory suggests that an unusually strong tide carried the whale inland. While this might sound far-fetched, extreme weather events such as storm surges or flash floods can transport large marine animals far beyond their usual habitats. Another possibility is that the whale died at sea and was later dragged ashore by humans or scavengers. However, without clear evidence of human intervention, this remains speculative. But perhaps the most chilling question is why the whale died in the first place. Marine biologists studying the case believe that shifting ocean conditions, such as rising temperatures and changing currents, may be confusing marine life, leading whales into unexpected and sometimes deadly locations. If that's true, this eerie Amazonian mystery may be a warning of bigger environmental changes on the horizon. Just as the discovery of the whale leaves us questioning the unknown, the boiling river in Peru adds another layer of strangeness to the jungle's mysteries. For centuries, local legends in Peru have spoken of a river so hot it could kill. According to stories, Spanish explorers who ventured into the Amazon in search of gold encountered this deadly waterway. The few survivors spoke of monstrous snakes, poisonous waters, and a river that boiled from below. For a long time, scientists dismissed these stories as myths, until Peruvian geoscientist Andrés Russo set out to find the truth. What he discovered was even stranger than fiction. The boiling river is real, and its scalding waters reach temperatures up to 93 degrees Celsius, 200 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to kill small animals instantly. But how does a river in the middle of the jungle reach such extreme temperatures? Unlike volcanic hot springs, this river isn't directly connected to magma. Instead, Russo's research suggests that rainwater seeps deep underground, where geothermal activity heats it up before it resurfaces as a superheated stream. Essentially, the entire river system acts like a giant underground boiler. This discovery has massive implications for both science and conservation. The river is a sacred site for indigenous communities, and protecting it from illegal deforestation is a major priority. Scientists are also studying its unique ecosystem, where heat-resistant bacteria thrive in conditions that would be lethal to most life forms. Who knows what other secrets might be hidden in its scalding waters? When we think of fairies, we often imagine tiny, delicate creatures with shimmering wings and magical wands. But folklore and history paint a very different picture. In the past, belief in fairies was so strong that people avoided calling them by name, instead referring to them as the little people or the hidden folk. Many cultures feared offending them, believing that fairies could either bless or curse humans depending on their mood. Deep in the jungle, an abandoned house shaped like a giant boot has sparked curiosity and wild theories. Could this be an actual fairy dwelling? Or is it simply an abandoned piece of whimsical architecture? The origin of fairy legends is a subject of much debate. Some believe fairies are nature spirits, akin to ghosts or the souls of the departed. Others claim they were once angels who fell from heaven but were not wicked enough to become demons. In England, the first recorded mention of fairies comes from the 13th century historian Gervase of Tilbury. Interestingly, not all fairies are mischievous or malevolent. Some, like brownies and hobgoblins, are said to help humans by performing household chores in exchange for small offerings like bread or milk. And fairy belief isn't just an ancient relic. People still report sightings to this day. In 1962, a Somerset farmer's wife claimed that she got lost in the Berkshire Downs and was guided back to the path by a mysterious little man in green who appeared at her elbow before vanishing into thin air. Could fairies be real? And is this boot-shaped house proof of their existence? Let us know what you think. Speaking of nature's mysteries, there's another fascinating claim that has intrigued jungle explorers for years. Can trees really walk? It sounds like something straight out of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, but some people claim there's a tree that can do just that. The Socratia exoriza, known as the walking palm, is found in the rainforests of Central and South America. According to legend, these trees can move across the jungle floor by growing new roots towards sunlight while allowing older roots to wither away. Over time, this process supposedly enables the tree to relocate to a better position. For decades, rainforest guides and indigenous communities have told stories about these trees creeping through the forest, inching toward brighter clearings. The first scientist to document this unusual phenomenon was John H. Bodley in 1980. Some estimates suggest these trees can walk as much as 2 to 3 centimeters per day. Though that might not sound like much, over the years, it could result in noticeable movement. While some scientists argue that the walking palm's unique root system provides stability in swampy conditions rather than actual locomotion, others maintain that its roots allow it to adjust its position over time. Researchers are still trying to determine whether this movement is significant enough to be considered true walking. Either way, next time you're in the rainforest, keep an eye on the trees. One might just be sneaking up on you. And speaking of people lost in the jungle, imagine living in total isolation for over 40 years, unaware that modern civilization even exists. That's exactly what happened to Ho Van Lang, the man often called the Real-Life Tarzan. Lang fled into the Vietnamese jungle with his father and brother in 1972 after an American bombing raid tragically wiped out the rest of their family. For 4 decades, they survived by foraging for food, hunting wild animals, and building shelters from bamboo and leaves. During this time, they had almost no contact with the outside world, only encountering other humans 5 times, and each time they ran away in fear. Lang had no knowledge of women, technology, or modern society. When he was finally discovered in 2015 by photographer Alvaro Cerezo, he was taken to a nearby village. The transition to modern life was overwhelming, and sadly, he struggled to adapt. Tragically, Lang passed away in 2021, with some believing that exposure to modern processed foods and chemicals may have contributed to his declining health. His story raises an interesting question. Can a simpler, natural life be healthier than the one we live today? And is civilization always an improvement? Let us know your thoughts. As we reflect on lost civilizations, in 2012, a team of explorers and researchers stumbled upon what they believed to be an ancient pyramid complex deep within Ecuador's Amazon jungle. The site was so remote that even most Ecuadorians had never heard of it. What makes this discovery truly fascinating is its connection to local legends about a race of giants who once lived in the area. Author and researcher Bruce Fenton dubbed the site the Lost City of the Giants, after enormous tools, far too large for human use, were found nearby. Indigenous tribes have long spoken of giant beings who once roamed the region, leaving behind massive stone structures and mysterious artifacts. The fear of these legendary beings is so deep-rooted that many locals refuse to go near the site, believing it to be guarded by supernatural entities. Interestingly, skeletal remains of giant humans have reportedly been found in nearby caves and other locations in Ecuador. Could these myths actually be based on reality? Or is this just another legend that has grown over time? Either way, the discovery of this mysterious complex adds a fascinating new piece to the puzzle of our ancient past. And while we consider the mysteries of giants and ancient civilizations, there's one creature in the jungle that truly stands out as a living monster: the Goliath bird-eating tarantula. Spiders are one of the most feared creatures on the planet, and for good reason. But even among them, one stands out as the undisputed king of arachnids, the Goliath bird-eating tarantula. As the largest spider in the world, this massive creature can weigh up to half a pound, with a leg span reaching a terrifying 12 inches. Found in the Amazon rainforest, the Goliath tarantula is so heavy that you can actually hear it walking through the forest at night, its hairy legs making an eerie thudding sound against the ground. Despite its name, this spider doesn't actually hunt birds very often. Instead, it preys on insects, rodents, frogs, and even small snakes. Unlike most predators, the Goliath tarantula doesn't chew its food. It injects its prey with digestive enzymes that liquefy its insides, allowing the spider to suck up the nutrient-rich soup. If you ever find yourself in the Amazon and hear an ominous rustling sound in the undergrowth, you might just be in the presence of this 8-legged nightmare. Deep in the valley of the Rio Grande de Taraba, the Diquis civilization flourished between 800 and 1500 AD, creating an advanced society with complex social, economic, and political systems. Among their most mysterious legacies are the massive stone spheres they carved. These smooth, perfectly rounded stones were placed in important areas of their settlements, often lining public plazas or marking paths to the homes of chieftains. Ranging in size from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter, these spheres were painstakingly crafted using harder rocks to shape them, followed by polishing with sand. The purpose of these enigmatic stones remains unknown, but their cultural significance was undeniable. Sadly, after the decline of the Diquis civilization due to colonization, the spheres were forgotten. Until the 1930s, when the United Fruit Company stumbled upon them while clearing land for banana plantations. It's an incredible rediscovery, but also a tragic reminder of the destruction of their jungle home. Speaking of the jungle and its hidden wonders, there's another incredible discovery deep within the Congo Basin. A vast peatland there has been fully mapped for the first time, revealing its immense size and environmental significance. These peatlands act as crucial carbon sinks, storing massive amounts of carbon and playing a key role in mitigating climate change. However, they are now under threat due to oil extraction by major petrochemical companies. Peat forms when dead plant material, such as leaves and roots, accumulates in waterlogged conditions, preventing decomposition. Over time, this builds up into thick layers that store carbon. If these peatlands dry out, the stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere, accelerating global warming. A team of international scientists discovered that the Central Congo Basin peatlands span an astonishing 16.7 million hectares, over 5 times the size of Belgium. Some areas contain peat layers as deep as 6.5 meters, collectively storing between 26 and 32 billion tons of carbon, equivalent to 3 years' worth of global fossil fuel emissions. Despite their importance, the Congolese government has put these lands up for auction to oil companies, risking the release of all this trapped carbon in the pursuit of new oil reserves. In the midst of the world's natural wonders, there lies a city that once thrived centuries ago, the ancient Maya city of El Mirador. Between 300 BC and 150 AD, El Mirador was a thriving city, home to as many as 80,000 people. Towering over the settlement was the 72-meter-tall Danta Pyramid, the tallest structure the Maya ever built, and the largest pyramid in the world by volume. Today, reaching El Mirador is an adventure in itself. With no roads for 60 kilometers, the ruins can only be accessed on foot, by horseback, or via helicopter. Nestled within the vast Maya Biosphere Reserve, the site is teeming with rare wildlife, including jaguars, pumas, giant anteaters, and scarlet macaws. Though some ruins were noted as early as 1885, serious exploration didn't begin until the 1960s. Now, researchers are in a race against time to study the site before looters strip it of its priceless artifacts. The Mirador Basin contains at least 26 known ancient Maya sites, but experts believe there could be 30 more waiting to be discovered, if they aren't stolen first. Speaking of strange and elusive life forms, another fascinating aspect of nature is a mysterious fungus known as Tricholoma. The genus Tricholoma belongs to the cup fungi family Sarcosaceae and can be found in tropical and subtropical regions around the world. These fungi grow on tree trunks, branches, and even fruit, forming deep, cup-shaped structures with striking colors ranging from yellow to red, though their vivid hues fade as they dry. Some species of Tricholoma are used as food by indigenous groups in Malaysia, though exactly how they prepare them remains a mystery. Others have a surprising use as fishing bait, with fishermen rubbing the fungi against hooks to attract their catch. With their unusual appearance and fascinating uses, these mushrooms are a truly trippy sight in nature. From nature's camouflage to ancient civilizations, we now turn to a place of historical and architectural significance, the lost rock fortress of Sigiriya in Sri Lanka. Rising 660 feet above the landscape, the ancient rock fortress of Sigiriya is a breathtaking sight in Sri Lanka. In the 5th century, King Kashyapa chose this towering rock column as the site for his new capital. At the top, he built a grand palace adorned with vibrant frescoes and a massive lion-shaped gate at its entrance. Despite its grandeur, the palace was abandoned after the king's death. Buddhist monks later moved in, using the site as a monastery until the 14th century. After centuries of neglect, Sigiriya was rediscovered in the 1830s by British explorer Major Jonathan Forbes. Though initial archaeological work began soon after, it wasn't until the 1980s that the site was fully excavated. Today, Sigiriya is one of Sri Lanka's most famous landmarks and a must-visit destination for history lovers. As we transition from ancient fortresses to more recent history, there's a remarkable story of survival in World War II. In December 1944, during the final months of World War II, Japanese Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda was stationed on the small island of Lubang in the Philippines. When U.S. forces attacked, He and a few fellow soldiers fled into the jungle. But Onoda didn't just hide. He continued to fight, refusing to believe that the war had ended. For nearly 30 years, Onoda carried out guerrilla operations, convinced that Japan would return for him. By 1959, the Japanese government had declared him dead, but he remained in the jungle, still fighting an enemy that no longer existed. It wasn't until 1974 that he was finally persuaded to surrender. When he returned to Japan, he was hailed as a hero, and his memoir became a bestseller. His story remains one of the most astonishing tales of wartime survival ever recorded. Finally, from the depths of the jungle to the hidden wonders beneath the earth, we now venture into the world's largest cave. Carved over millions of years by geological forces, Vietnam's Son Doong Cave is the largest natural cave in the world. Part of the Phong Nha Bang cave system, it is an awe-inspiring subterranean wonder. Formed between 2 and 5 million years ago, Son Doong stretches at least 6.5 kilometers long, with ceilings reaching 200 meters high and passages 150 meters wide. What makes it truly extraordinary is a massive hole in its roof, where light pours in, allowing a lush jungle to thrive inside. This unique feature has led explorers to nickname it the Garden of Eden. A hidden paradise, Son Doong is one of Earth's last great frontiers, offering a glimpse into an untouched world that few have ever seen. The Tayos Caves in Ecuador's Amazon region hold one of the most persistent archaeological mysteries of our time, the alleged existence of a vast metallic library hidden deep within its tunnels. This legend first gained international attention in 1969 when Hungarian-Argentine explorer Juan Moritz came forward with an incredible claim. After years of searching and gaining the trust of local Shuar tribespeople, Moritz said he had discovered the fabled metal library. Thousands of thin plates, some appearing to be gold, others made of an unknown alloy, all inscribed with strange glyphs and arranged meticulously on stone shelves. His descriptions painted a picture of an organized archive from an unknown civilization, preserved perfectly in the cave's cool, dry chambers. What made Moritz's account particularly compelling were the specific details he provided about the library's construction. He described smooth walls that appeared worked by human hands, unnatural right angles in the stone passages leading to the chamber, and an eerie acoustic quality where sounds behaved unpredictably. Most intriguing was his claim about the plates themselves. Some showed signs of advanced metallurgical techniques, with precise engravings that shouldn't have been possible with the crude tools available to ancient South American cultures. Moritz insisted this was no random collection of artifacts, but a carefully cataloged system of recorded knowledge, though what information it contained and who created it remained a mystery. The story took an even stranger turn when famous astronaut Neil Armstrong became involved in 1976, joining a large British-Ecuadorian expedition to investigate the caves. While the team didn't find the legendary library, they did document numerous anomalies that kept the mystery alive. Their equipment detected unusual magnetic fluctuations in certain tunnel branches. Some chambers exhibited strange acoustic properties, whispers carrying hundreds of feet with perfect clarity, while loud noises were abruptly silenced. Most puzzling were the sections of cave with remarkably straight passageways and smooth walls that appeared artificially enhanced, though carbon dating showed no evidence of recent human activity. Local Shuar guides shared their own knowledge of the caves during these expeditions. They spoke of ancestors who had occasionally found single metal plates in the tunnels, always returning them immediately for fear of angering the spirits said to guard the library. Several described an area deep in the cave system where the air becomes unnaturally still and the walls emit a faint vibration. One elder recounted a story passed down through generations about hunters who followed a side passage and found themselves in a circular chamber with metallic objects, only to become violently ill days later. A warning, he said, about disturbing what wasn't meant to be found. Geologists studying the region have confirmed the presence of various metal deposits that could theoretically be worked into plates, including gold and unusual alloys resistant to corrosion. However, creating the organized library Moritz described would have required technology and metallurgical knowledge not associated with any known ancient civilization in the area. Some researchers have pointed to similarities between the Taos legends and other global myths about hidden repositories of ancient knowledge, suggesting these stories might preserve fragments of truth about lost civilizations or advanced prehistoric cultures. The mystery deepens when considering recent technological surveys of the caves. Ground-penetrating radar has detected possible chambers yet to be explored, while sonar mapping reveals an extensive network of tunnels far beyond what's been documented. In 2015, a robotic probe sent into an unstable passage captured brief footage of what appear to be stacked rectangular objects before malfunctioning, a tantalizing hint that perhaps the metal library does exist, waiting to be found in some uncharted section of this vast underground labyrinth. For centuries, explorers and scientists believed the Amazon was a pristine wilderness, untouched by large-scale human civilization. That all changed in the early 2000s, when deforestation revealed something astonishing: massive geometric earthworks carved into the jungle floor. These weren't random formations. Perfect circles, squares, and octagons, some over 300 meters across, stretched across the landscape like some ancient blueprint. The first discoveries came by accident. Satellite imagery picked up strange geometric shadows under the canopy, patterns too precise to be natural. When archaeologists investigated, they found ditches and embankments forming elaborate designs, some dating back over 2,000 years. The structures, now called geoglyphs, appeared across Brazil and Bolivia, suggesting a previously unknown network of settlements. But the real mystery isn't just their existence, it's their purpose. Unlike pyramids or temples, these earthworks don't align with astronomical events. They contain no artifacts, no burial sites, no signs of permanent habitation. Some theories suggest they were ceremonial spaces, perhaps ritual grounds for gatherings or sacred processions. Others propose they served as defensive structures, though their intricate designs seem impractical for warfare. Even stranger, the sheer scale of construction. Building these earthworks would have required thousands of workers, evidence of a complex, organized society thriving in what we once thought was untouched jungle. Yet there's no trace of the people who built them. No pottery, no tools, no remains. Just these colossal shapes, hidden for centuries under the forest floor. Recent LiDAR scans have only deepened the mystery. Beneath the visible geoglyphs lie hundreds more, an entire hidden landscape of geometric forms, suggesting the Amazon may have been far more densely populated than anyone imagined. Some researchers now believe these earthworks could be part of a vast, interconnected system, an ancient garden city model, blending agriculture, ritual, and urban planning in ways we don't yet understand. But the most unsettling question remains: why were they abandoned? There's no evidence of invasion, disease, or natural disaster. The builders simply vanished, leaving behind only these eerie geometric ghosts in the earth, waiting for the jungle to reclaim them. High in the Andes Mountains of Peru, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, lies a rock formation that defies explanation. The locals call it Aramu Muru, or the Doorway of the Gods, a massive rectangular alcove carved with uncanny precision into solid stone. At its center, a smaller door shape is recessed into the rock, complete with what appears to be a circular depression where a handle or key might fit. But this is no ordinary ancient ruin. According to local legends, this doorway does not lead anywhere in this world. The first documented outsider to encounter the doorway was a Spanish priest in the 1600s, who recorded indigenous tales of a gateway to the land of the gods. The stories claim that in ancient times, great heroes and shamans could pass through the doorway, some never to return, others emerging with knowledge no mortal should possess. The priest dismissed it as superstition, but the legends persisted. Centuries later, in the 1990s, the site was rediscovered by a local guide named José Luis Delgado Mamani, who claimed he had seen the doorway in vivid dreams long before finding it in reality. What makes Aramu Muru so unsettling is its unnatural perfection. The main structure stands nearly 23 feet tall, with the smaller door at its center measuring exactly 6 feet 6 inches in height, large enough for a person to step through if it were open. The edges are razor straight, the corners perfectly squared. Geological studies confirm the rock is solid andesite, a notoriously hard stone that would have required advanced tools to shape. Yet there are no tool marks, no signs of chiseling. It's as if the rock simply melted into this formation. Even stranger are the reports of those who have dared to interact with the doorway. Visitors describe sudden temperature drops near the structure, even in broad daylight. Some claim to hear faint, harmonic humming, a sound that seems to come from the rock itself. Several have reported seeing brief flashes of blue light emanating from the central depression, though these accounts remain unverified. In 1996, a group of researchers attempting to scan the doorway with electromagnetic sensors claimed their equipment detected anomalous energy fluctuations, with readings spiking erratically near the stone. The team's lead physicist later admitted, off the record, that the patterns resembled those observed near experimental quantum physics laboratories. Local shamans still perform rituals at the site, leaving offerings of coca leaves and flowers at the base of the rock. They speak of the doorway in hushed tones, insisting it is not always closed, just waiting for the right moment, or the right person, to open it again. Some tell of an Incan priest named Aramumuru, who allegedly fled the Spanish conquest with a sacred golden disc, said to be the key to the gateway. According to the legend, he passed through the doorway in front of witnesses, vanishing into a tunnel of blue light, and the disc vanished with him. Modern archaeology has no satisfying explanation for Aramumuru. The Incas left no records of its construction, though its style does not match their typical masonry. Some researchers speculate it could be remnants of a far older civilization, perhaps even the work of the mysterious Tiahuanaco culture, whose ruins lie just across the Bolivian border. Others suggest the doorway may have been an unfinished tomb or shrine, abandoned mid-construction. But this theory fails to explain the site's precise geometry, the lack of tool marks, or the persistent legends of its otherworldly function. Perhaps most chilling are the disappearance stories. In 2006, a Norwegian tourist named Eric Bergman vanished near the site after telling his guide he intended to meditate at the doorway. His backpack and camera were found leaning against the rock, the last photo showing only a blur of blue light. In 2014, a local shepherd claimed to see a tall man in robes step into the stone before vanishing, an account eerily similar to the Aramumuru legend. As of now, no scientific team has been able to prove or disprove the doorway's alleged properties. But one thing is certain. In this remote corner of the Andes, the line between myth and reality grows disturbingly thin. The legend of the Golden Disc is where the story of Aramumuru takes an even stranger turn. According to local oral traditions, the doorway was not always inactive. It was said to be opened by a sacred artifact, a circular disc made of an unknown gold alloy, inscribed with symbols that no living person could decipher. The disc was allegedly kept by a secretive order of Incan priests who understood its power, until the Spanish conquest forced them to hide it. The last known guardian, a priest named Aramumuru, from whom the site takes its name, is said to have fled with the disc to the doorway, where he pressed it into the depression at the center of the smaller door. Witnesses claimed a blue light erupted from the stone, and Aramumuru stepped through, never to be seen again. The disc vanished with him. This story might have been dismissed as pure mythology if not for two disturbing details. First, in 1996, a team of researchers from the University of Lima studying the doorway's magnetic anomalies discovered something embedded in the rock, microscopic traces of gold alloy in the circular depression. The composition was unusual, gold mixed with traces of copper and an unidentified metallic element that defied classification. The pattern of residue suggested something circular had once been inserted and removed with tremendous force, as if ripped away. Second, in 2003, a Bolivian historian uncovered a forgotten 17th-century Jesuit manuscript that described Spanish soldiers interrogating an Incan elder about a golden key to the gods' road. The elder, under torture, confessed that the artifact had been taken to the stone gate in the mountains and used one final time before the earth swallowed it. These findings sparked a wave of interest in the scientific community and some controversial experiments. In 2010, a team of physicists and archaeologists, funded by a private research foundation, attempted to stimulate the doorway using electromagnetic frequencies matching the resonance of the gold traces found in the stone. Witnesses reported that during the experiment, the depression at the center of the doorway began emitting a faint blue glow, visible even in daylight. One team member claimed to hear a deep harmonic hum like a giant bell ringing underwater. The experiment was abruptly halted when 2 researchers collapsed, suffering from temporary blindness and disorientation. No official explanation was ever given, and the full findings were never published. Then came the disappearances. In 2015, a group of amateur explorers claimed to have found a metal object buried near the doorway, a claim later denied by Peruvian authorities. Days later, one of the explorers, a French national named Luc Fournier, vanished during the night. His tent was found intact, his belongings untouched, but his journal contained a single cryptic entry. The symbols are not carved, they are growing. To this day, the doorway remains silent, its secrets locked in stone. But the legends persist. Local shamans still warn that the gate is not meant for this era, that when the stars realign, it will open again. Scientists continue to debate whether Aramu Muru is an ancient artifact of lost technology, a natural formation given mythical significance, or something far more inexplicable. One thing is certain. In the shadow of this towering rock, the past does not feel so distant, and the doorway, it does not feel so closed. The singing stones of the Guiana Highlands remain one of the most perplexing archaeological mysteries in the world. Located in the remote highlands where Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil converge, this strange formation of massive stone monoliths has confounded researchers since its first scientific documentation in the late 19th century. The stones, some towering over 15 meters tall, stand arranged in precise geometric patterns that immediately suggest artificial placement rather than natural formation. But their most extraordinary feature is their acoustic properties. When struck, each stone emits a clear, resonant tone like a finely tuned musical instrument, creating what amounts to a giant natural lithophone spanning multiple octaves. The first detailed account comes from British explorer Charles Barrington Brown in 1876, who described in his journals how the rocks produced bell-like tones when struck with a hammer. He meticulously recorded at least 32 distinct notes across the formation before his indigenous guides forced him to stop, warning that the stones were sacred and disturbing them further would bring terrible consequences. Modern expeditions have confirmed and expanded upon Brown's findings, uncovering even more bizarre details about this mysterious site. Geological analysis reveals the stones are composed of an extremely rare form of felsic igneous rock containing microscopic air pockets that create their unique resonant properties, a geological anomaly that occurs nowhere else on Earth naturally. For generations, indigenous tribes in the remotest parts of the Amazon have whispered about structures unlike anything known to modern archaeology, pyramids made not of stone, but of something resembling glass or crystal, hidden beneath the dense canopy. These were not the stepped pyramids of the Maya or the Inca, but smooth, angular formations said to glow faintly under certain moonlight. Until recently, these accounts were dismissed as myth. Then, satellite imagery revealed anomalies. In 2012, a Brazilian survey team studying deforestation patterns spotted unusual geometric formations in the northwestern Amazon, near the border of Colombia and Venezuela, where few expeditions venture. The shapes were too precise to be natural, 4-sided pyramids, approximately 60 meters tall, their edges aligned with cardinal directions. But what made them extraordinary were the spectral readings. The structures reflected light at wavelengths consistent with quartz crystal, not the dull echo of stone or earth. The first ground expedition in 2016 only deepened the mystery. A joint team of archaeologists and geologists hacked their way to the nearest site, expecting to find some unusual rock formation. Instead, they encountered a sheer, translucent surface, not glass, as the legend suggested, but an enormous outcropping of prismatic quartz, worn smooth by time. The entire structure appeared to have been shaped, its edges too straight, its angles too perfect. Stranger still, the quartz was threaded with veins of an unknown metallic compound that pulsed with weak electromagnetic energy. Handheld scanners registered erratic fluctuations, strongest at the pyramid's apex. Local Yanomami tribespeople, who had guided the team reluctantly, refused to approach the structure. They called it Tepui Ka, Spirit Mountain, and spoke of a taboo. Anyone who climbed it would see too much and lose their way back. The expedition's lead geologist, Dr. Luis Fernandez, later admitted in an interview that his compass had spun wildly at the summit. It was as if the rock itself was generating a magnetic field, he said. But the real shock came when researchers took core samples. The quartz showed signs of having been melted and reformed, something that would require temperatures exceeding 1,700 degrees Celsius. Natural processes couldn't explain it. Neither could the indigenous peoples of the region, who had no known technology for such feats. Even more perplexing were the microscopic bubbles trapped in the crystal. Analysis revealed they contained an atmosphere unlike Earth's, with abnormally high levels of argon and xenon. Then there were the rooms. Ground-penetrating radar detected hollow chambers beneath the pyramid, arranged in a pattern that mirrored the structure above. Attempts to reach them were thwarted by the Yanomami, who forbade excavation. But one tribesman, after nights of negotiation, revealed a chilling detail. The chambers were not empty. They held the shining ones, a term the team initially took to mean crystals, until he clarified. Not stones, he said. The ones who made the stones. As of 2023, the site remains unexplored further. The Brazilian government, under pressure from indigenous groups, has restricted access. But satellite scans show something unsettling. The other pyramids, previously dormant, have begun emitting faint thermal signatures at precise intervals, every 13 days, at 3:17 a.m. local time, as if something inside is waking up on schedule. The thermal anomalies changed everything. In March 2023, a European Space Agency satellite monitoring deforestation captured infrared data that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The crystal pyramids, previously believed to be inert geological oddities, were emitting sudden, rhythmic bursts of heat. Not random fluctuations, but precise pulses. 11.3-second intervals, always at 3:17 a.m. local time, always lasting exactly 2 minutes and 18 seconds. The pattern repeated every 13 days like clockwork. A rushed expedition in April 2023, led by a UN-sanctioned team, found the main pyramid's surface transformed. The once smooth quartz faces now showed faint, vein-like luminescence where the metallic inclusions had begun oxidizing. Ground scans revealed the underground chambers had reconfigured, walls shifting to form new angular passages that hadn't been there in 2016. Most disturbing were the sounds. Hydrophones placed at the base picked up low-frequency vibrations, 17 to 19 hertz, matching the thermal pulses. The same frequency known to induce trance states in humans. The Yanomami elders broke their silence after these findings. Through a reluctant translator, they shared fragments of their origin myth. The Tepui Ka were not built, but grown long ago by the Omawe, the Shining Ones, beings who came from the sky when the world was soft. The pyramids served as seeds to make the land breathe right. The elders claimed the Omawe still slept below, and the recent activity meant they were dreaming louder. When pressed, one shaman drew a symbol in the dirt, a spiral inside a cube, identical to a pattern researchers had found glowing faintly on the pyramid's eastern face. Then came the incident on June 5, 2023. A nighttime monitoring team reported seeing the entire pyramid emit a brief, cobalt blue flash at exactly 3:17 a.m., coinciding with the thermal spike. Security footage showed the surrounding jungle animals falling eerily silent 90 seconds beforehand. 3 researchers stationed at the base camp later complained of identical, vivid nightmares, visions of a city of moving light beneath their feet, and a voice repeating a phrase in an unknown language that linguists later tentatively translated as, "The vessel is almost full." As of October 2023, all study has been suspended. The Brazilian military has cordoned off a 50-mile exclusion zone, citing geological hazards. But satellite data shows the thermal pulses are intensifying, and the intervals between them are shortening. Deep in the untouched wilderness of the Amazon rainforest, a legend lurks among the trees. It is whispered by elders, feared by hunters, and passed down through generations in hushed tones. Those who claim to have seen it describe a towering, shaggy beast, standing over 7 feet tall, covered in matted fur, and exuding a stench so unbearable it makes the air itself feel poisoned. Some say it has glowing red eyes that pierce through the darkness of the jungle. Others insist its most terrifying feature is the gaping, snarling mouth that stretches across its stomach. It is called the Mapinguari, and for centuries it has been the subject of both fascination and fear. Unlike the friendly sloths that lazily hang from the trees, this creature is no gentle giant. It is said to be a fierce guardian of the forest, attacking those who harm its home. According to tribal folklore, the Mapinguari despises those who cut down sacred trees, hunt more than they need, or disturb the balance of nature. Those who show respect to the land may never encounter it, but those who don't, they may hear its deep, guttural growl before they even realize they are being watched. Many local tribes take the legend seriously, believing the Mapinguari is not just a story, but a living, breathing entity. They tell of hunters who ventured too far into the jungle, only to return shaking, their faces pale with terror. Some never returned at all. One common belief is that the creature can make itself invisible, moving through the dense jungle unseen, revealing itself only when it chooses. Some stories even claim it is immune to bullets, with skin so tough that no blade or spear can pierce it. While scientists remain skeptical, there are modern accounts that are difficult to dismiss. Deep in the rainforest, beyond where roads end and civilization fades, locals still report sightings. In 1937, a rubber tapper claimed he was stalked by a large, foul-smelling beast with footprints the size of dinner plates. In the 1980s, a group of gold prospectors fled their camp after a massive bipedal creature charged at them from the shadows. And as recently as the early 2000s, an indigenous guide described seeing a hulking figure moving through the trees. Too big to be a man, too upright to be a known animal. Could the Mapinguari be more than myth? Some believe there is a shocking truth hidden within these stories, one that stretches back thousands of years. But to uncover it, we must look deeper into the past, into the bones of creatures long thought extinct, and into the accounts of those who claim the monster still roams. For centuries, scientists have dismissed the Mapinguari as nothing more than folklore, an exaggerated tale passed down by indigenous tribes. But what if the stories are rooted in truth? What if, buried beneath the layers of myth, there is a real creature that once roamed, or still roams, the dense, uncharted jungles of the Amazon? Some researchers believe the legend of the Mapinguari may be linked to an ancient giant, Megatherium, a prehistoric ground sloth that lived in South America thousands of years ago. Unlike the slow, tree-dwelling sloths of today, Megatherium was a monstrous beast. Standing over 10 feet tall and weighing nearly 4 tons, it was one of the largest land mammals of its time. Fossils have confirmed that these massive sloths walked on their hind legs, used their powerful claws for defense, and had thick fur that could match the descriptions of the Mapinguari. Most scientists believe Megatherium went extinct at the end of the last ice age, but some question whether small populations might have survived in the deepest parts of the rainforest. If a few of these ancient creatures persisted undetected, could they have given rise to the legend? Dr. David Oren, an ornithologist who has spent years investigating the Mapinguari, believes this is exactly what happened. He suggests that the stories of a giant shaggy beast are remnants of human encounters with the last surviving ground sloths. Extinct species can survive as legends for hundreds of years, Oren told the New York Times in 2007. If that's true, the Mapinguari may not be supernatural, but it could be one of the last echoes of a prehistoric past. Yet, not all sightings of the Mapinguari can be dismissed as ancient memories. Reports persist into the modern day. In 2007, A group of Brazilian villagers claimed that a massive, foul-smelling beast tore through their crops, leaving behind deep, clawed footprints unlike anything they had seen before. In 2010, a seasoned hunter spoke of a terrifying encounter. While tracking game in a remote part of the rainforest, he heard a deafening roar and saw a shadowy figure moving through the undergrowth. Whatever it was walking on two legs. So far, no one has captured clear photographic evidence of the Mapinguari. No bones, no bodies, just stories, footprints, and frightened eyewitnesses. Scientists argue that without physical proof, the creature cannot be considered real. But deep in the Amazon, where countless species remain undiscovered, is it really so impossible? Perhaps somewhere in the vast, uncharted wilderness, a creature still roams, a beast of legend, a guardian of the jungle, or a surviving relic of an ancient world. Until undeniable evidence is found, the truth of the Mapinguari remains a mystery. But one thing is certain. Those who walk the rainforest at night still hear its eerie calls, still catch glimpses of a towering shadow, and still believe that the Mapinguari is watching. In the early morning hours of November 18, 1961, a young man was fighting for his life in the open waters off the coast of New Guinea. He was exhausted, dehydrated, and facing the relentless waves of the Arafura Sea. His name was Michael Rockefeller, and within hours he would vanish, leaving behind one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. But before we dive into the events of that fateful day, let's take a step back and understand who Michael Rockefeller was and why he was in one of the most remote and dangerous places on Earth. Michael Rockefeller was born into one of the richest and most powerful families in America. His father, Nelson Rockefeller, was the governor of New York and would later become vice president of the United States. The Rockefeller name was synonymous with wealth, power, and influence. But Michael was different. He wasn't interested in politics or business. He was drawn to art, adventure, and anthropology. Instead of following the path laid out for him, he wanted to carve his own. After graduating from Harvard with a degree in history and economics, Michael became fascinated with the indigenous cultures of the world, especially those untouched by modern civilization. This led him to Dutch New Guinea, now part of Indonesia, one of the last truly unexplored frontiers in the early 1960s. At the time, New Guinea was home to some of the most isolated tribes on Earth. Michael was particularly interested in the Asmat people, a group known for their intricate wood carvings, complex warrior traditions, and, according to some reports, their history of headhunting and cannibalism. Michael was on a mission, not just to explore, but to collect art. He was working on a project with the Museum of Primitive Art in New York, founded by his father. His goal was to bring back rare artifacts and introduce the world to the Asmat's unique craftsmanship. But this was no ordinary field trip. The Asmat lived in a land largely untouched by Western civilization, where tribal wars and spiritual rituals shaped daily life. It was a dangerous place, one where outsiders were often viewed with suspicion. Yet, Michael wasn't deterred. He spent weeks traveling from village to village, buying wooden sculptures and shields, carefully documenting his journey. He was determined to immerse himself in the Asmat way of life, despite the risks. On November 17, 1961, Michael and his Dutch companion, René Wassing, were aboard a small catamaran, a simple two-hulled boat traveling along the coast near the Asmat region. They were accompanied by two local guides. The ocean was rough that day. Huge waves battered the small boat until finally it capsized. All four men were thrown into the sea miles from shore. The guides, familiar with the waters, immediately swam toward land, but Michael and René clung to the overturned hull, drifting aimlessly for hours. The waves carried them farther out to sea, away from any chance of rescue. As night fell, the two men had been floating for over 24 hours. They were sunburned, exhausted, and losing hope. Then, Michael made a bold decision. He turned to René and said, "I think I can make it." With nothing but a pair of makeshift floats strapped to his waist, Michael began swimming toward the distant shore, disappearing into the horizon. René, too weak to follow, watched as his companion faded into the waves. Hours passed, then an entire day. Michael never returned. When René was rescued the following morning, a massive search was launched. The Rockefeller family, the Dutch authorities, and the Indonesian government all got involved. Helicopters, boats, and search teams scoured the jungle, hoping to find any trace of Michael. They searched for weeks, but no body, no clothing, no sign of struggle was ever found. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened to him. But the mystery was just beginning. Some say he drowned, his body lost to the ocean. Others believe he made it to shore, only to face something far worse than the sea. The official explanation for Michael Rockefeller's disappearance was simple. He drowned. The ocean was vast, the currents were strong, and after swimming for hours, exhaustion likely overtook him. It's an easy conclusion to accept, except for one thing. Whispers began to spread among the Asmat people. Stories emerged, ones that suggested Michael had not drowned at all. He had made it to shore, alive. But that was only the beginning of his fate. To understand why, we need to look at the world he was stepping into. The Asmat people lived in a land ruled by ancient traditions, where every action carried deep spiritual significance. One of those traditions was the cycle of revenge. In the Asmat culture, war was not just about territory or power. It was about balance. If one tribe killed a warrior from another village, that death had to be avenged. The spirit of the fallen could not rest until an enemy had been taken in return. This cycle of violence had gone on for centuries, shaping every aspect of their society. And just a few years before Michael arrived, Dutch colonial officers had disrupted that balance in the worst way possible. In 1958, a Dutch patrol had come to the village of Otjanep, one of the most feared and powerful in the Asmat region. Tensions ran high, and a confrontation erupted. In the chaos, Dutch soldiers opened fire, killing several tribal leaders. To the Asmat, this was not just an attack. It was an unavenged crime, a deep wound that demanded retribution. But how could they strike back? Killing a Dutch officer or soldier would bring immediate retaliation. The Dutch had guns, boats, and the full power of their colonial government behind them. But what about an outsider? A white man who came alone, unarmed, and unaware of the deadly history that hung over him. In 2014, journalist Carl Hoffman traveled deep into the Asmat region to investigate the Rockefeller mystery. He spoke with elders, villagers, and people who had inherited the stories passed down for generations. The accounts he heard were chilling. According to multiple sources, Michael did make it to shore that day. He stumbled onto land, exhausted, delirious from the sun and sea. But instead of finding salvation, he walked straight into the hands of warriors who had been waiting for a chance, waiting to restore balance. The stories claim that Michael Rockefeller was taken, dragged into the jungle, and killed. His body was butchered, his bones cleaned, his skull preserved in the ritualistic way of their ancestors. His spirit, in their eyes, had become part of the Asmat. Of course, these are just stories. No physical proof has ever surfaced, no remains, no definitive evidence. But the whispers never faded. Even decades later, visitors to the region report hearing the same thing from different people, in different villages, separated by time and distance. The details are eerily consistent. The Dutch government and the Rockefeller family officially closed the case, accepting the drowning theory. But behind closed doors, some members of the family weren't so sure. Reports indicate that private investigators were sent to the region in secret. One even claimed to have found evidence that Michael had survived for some time before meeting his end. But if the truth is out there, buried deep in the jungles of New Guinea, it's likely to remain a mystery forever. The Asmat do not speak of their dead lightly. Their past is wrapped in silence and their legends remain their own. Did Michael Rockefeller drown in the sea, lost to the waves? Or did he walk into the heart of the jungle, never to return? We may never know, but his story, half a century later, continues to haunt the world. In 1925, British explorer Percy Fawcett embarked on an expedition deep into the Amazon rainforest, convinced he would find the remnants of a lost civilization. He called it the City of Z, a fabled metropolis hidden somewhere in the dense jungle, a place that, if real, would challenge everything historians believed about ancient South American civilizations. Fawcett's journey into the unknown would become one of the most legendary mysteries in the world of exploration. But he never returned, and to this day, no one knows exactly what happened to him. Fawcett was not just any explorer. He was one of the most respected cartographers and adventurers of his time. Before setting out in search of Z, he had spent years mapping the uncharted regions of South America for the Royal Geographical Society. He had survived deadly jungles, hostile indigenous tribes, and the ever-present threat of disease. He was known for his resilience, his almost supernatural ability to navigate through the wild, and his unwavering belief that the Amazon was home to lost civilizations far more advanced than anyone had ever imagined. His theories were based on a mix of historical records, indigenous legends, and his own experiences. The Spanish conquistadors had returned from the New World with stories of vast cities filled with gold, but over time, these were dismissed as myths, exaggerations born from greed and hallucination. Fawcett, however, was convinced that the accounts were based on something real. He believed that deep in the jungle, past the rivers and the impassable terrain, there was a city built by an ancient and sophisticated culture. He was so certain that he staked everything on it. Unlike his previous expeditions, where he had the backing of major institutions, this time he chose to go alone, bringing only his son Jack and Jack's best friend, Raleigh Rimmel. Fawcett's reasoning was simple. Large groups attracted attention and hostility. He believed a small party, moving carefully and respectfully, would have a much greater chance of success. With minimal supplies, they ventured into the unknown, leaving behind only cryptic letters detailing their journey. The last message received from Fawcett was brief but optimistic. He wrote that they were about to enter uncharted territory and that he felt confident they would soon reach their destination. He told his family not to worry if they didn't hear from him for a while. After that, silence. No letters, no word, no trace. When months turned into years, theories began to swirl. Had they been killed by hostile tribes? Attacked by wild animals? Had they succumbed to disease, starvation, or the countless other dangers lurking in the jungle? Or, as some whispered, had they actually found Z and chosen to stay there, abandoning the outside world forever? Search parties were sent, some backed by newspapers eager for a sensational story, others by fellow explorers hoping to bring closure to the mystery. But none returned with answers. In fact, some of the rescuers vanished themselves, swallowed by the same jungle that had claimed Fawcett. Then came the rumors, accounts from indigenous tribes who spoke of a white man living among them, a bearded foreigner who had integrated into their society. Some believed it was Fawcett. Others dismissed these as just another layer of myth in an already legendary tale. Over the decades, explorers continued to search for any clue, any remains, any sign of what might have happened. But the Amazon keeps its secrets well. In more recent years, archaeologists have uncovered evidence that suggests Fawcett may not have been entirely wrong. Deep in the jungle, ruins of advanced pre-Columbian societies have been found, proving that large, complex civilizations did exist in the Amazon long before European contact. But whether one of these was the lost city of Z remains a mystery. The deeper you look into Fawcett's story, the stranger it gets. Some claim he was a man obsessed, blinded by his own fantasies. Others believe he may have uncovered something that others wanted to keep hidden. One thing is certain: Percy Fawcett's disappearance is one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, and the truth, whatever it may be, is still waiting somewhere in the heart of the Amazon. The search for Colonel Percy Fawcett and the lost city of Z had turned into an obsession for many. Expeditions had ventured deep into the Amazon, hoping to uncover his fate, but time and time again, they met only with failure, misfortune, or their own disappearance into the jungle's unforgiving grasp. Yet, whispers persisted. Stories passed down among indigenous tribes spoke of a foreigner who had once walked among them, a man who bore a resemblance to Fawcett. Some claimed he had integrated into a hidden tribe, abandoning the outside world entirely. Others insisted he had been killed, his body lost to time, and the endless green abyss of the rainforest. Years turned to decades, and the mystery of Fawcett only grew more alluring. Countless theories emerged, some rational, others bizarre. Could he have stumbled upon the lost city of Z, only to decide to stay, choosing its wonders over the modern world? Had he encountered an aggressive tribe that ended his journey in bloodshed? Or had he simply succumbed to the jungle itself, perishing like so many others who dared to challenge its depths? In the 1950s, a man named Orlando Villas-Boas, an explorer and advocate for indigenous rights, claimed to have come across an elderly tribesman who spoke of a white man living among them many years ago. According to the tale, the man had suffered from severe illness and eventually died. Some believed this was Fawcett's ultimate fate, but without tangible proof, the world was left to wonder. Then, in the 1990s, a Brazilian banker named James Lynch led yet another expedition into the Amazon. He and his team retraced Fawcett's final steps, encountering tribal communities along the way. They claimed to have heard first-hand accounts of a mysterious outsider who once lived among them. Some even claimed that this man had taken a local wife and had children. But Lynch, like so many before him, returned without definitive evidence. The legend remained just that, a legend. Despite the many failed searches, Fawcett's story refused to fade into history. His notes, sketches, and letters painted the picture of a man who truly believed in something greater, something hidden within the depths of the jungle. And while many dismissed his claims of a grand lost civilization, archaeologists in the 21st century began making discoveries that suggested he may have been onto something all along. In the early 2000s, satellite imagery revealed enormous geoglyphs, massive earthworks shaped into geometric patterns, scattered across the Amazon. These formations suggested that large, complex societies once thrived in the rainforest, their traces hidden beneath centuries of overgrowth. Researchers also uncovered evidence of highly sophisticated agriculture and vast settlements, challenging the long-held belief that the Amazon had always been an untouched wilderness. Could this have been what Fawcett was looking for? Had he found something that others refused to believe? Even today, the fate of Percy Fawcett remains unknown. His disappearance remains one of the greatest mysteries in the world of exploration, a tale of ambition, obsession, and the untamed power of the jungle. Some still believe that deep in the heart of the Amazon, the lost city of Z waits to be discovered, its ruins buried beneath the canopy, its secrets kept safe by time. And perhaps, somewhere out there, Fawcett's ghost still walks among the trees, forever searching for the city that captured his imagination and his soul. The Nahanni Valley, also known as the Valley of Headless Men, is a place of both immense natural beauty and ominous legend. Hidden within the Northwest Territories of Canada, it is a land of jagged mountains, winding rivers, and misty canyons. But beyond its breathtaking landscapes, Nahanni harbors a chilling reputation. For over a century, this remote region has been the site of strange disappearances, gruesome discoveries, and eerie folklore. The legends have drawn in adventurers, treasure hunters, and researchers, many of whom have never returned. The mystery of Nahanni first gained notoriety in the early 20th century, when prospectors searching for gold began reporting bizarre occurrences. Among them were two brothers, Willie and Frank McLeod, who set out in 1906 to stake their claim along the South Nahanni River. They were experienced and well prepared, but when they failed to return, a search party was sent after them. A year later, their decapitated bodies were found on the banks of the river, their heads missing without a trace. No explanation was ever found for their deaths, and the unsettling nature of their demise gave birth to the legend of the Valley of Headless Men. This wasn't an isolated incident. In 1917, another prospector, Martin Jorgensen, built a small cabin in the valley, determined to uncover its secrets. He was later found burned to death in the ruins of his shelter, his skull missing. In the 1940s, a miner named John O'Brien was discovered frozen in the wilderness, sitting against a tree as if he had calmly fallen asleep. Yet something about his expression suggested he had met a terrifying end. Indigenous Diné tribes had long warned outsiders of the valley's dangers. To them, Nahanni was a sacred yet forbidden place, home to spirits and malevolent forces. Their stories spoke of a hidden tribe of warriors who would protect the valley from intruders, sometimes referred to as the Naha people. According to legend, the Naha were fierce and brutal, attacking rival tribes before mysteriously vanishing. Some believe they still exist in the valley's untouched depths, killing anyone who dares trespass into their domain. But the valley's mysteries don't stop there. Over the years, eerie lights have been spotted flickering over the canyons, and strange noises echo through the mountains at night. Some explorers have returned with stories of shadowy figures watching them from the cliffs, their presence barely discernible in the fog. Others claim to have seen unidentified flying objects darting above the landscape, leading to speculation that the valley may be home to more than just earthly threats. Despite the warnings, gold fever continued to draw people into Nahanni's depths. One of the most persistent theories behind the strange deaths is that the valley contains a long-lost gold mine, one so rich and well hidden that those who come close to discovering it are met with untimely ends. The McLeod brothers were rumored to have found a massive gold deposit before they were killed. Could they have been murdered by another prospector, desperate to keep the location a secret? Or was there something far older and more dangerous at play? Adding to the enigma, the region is known for its incredibly unusual geology. Deep cave systems remain unexplored, and hot springs keep sections of the valley warm even in the brutal Canadian winters. Some believe that unknown predators could be hiding within these caves, responsible for the disappearances over the years. Others suggest a connection to ancient legends of lost civilizations, hinting that something far more extraordinary may be buried beneath Nahanni's rugged terrain. As more explorers enter the valley, the mystery only deepens. The second part of this story will delve into modern-day expeditions, strange findings, and the theories that attempt to explain the chilling fate of those who venture too far into Nahanni's grasp. The search for Colonel Percy Fawcett did not end with his disappearance in 1925. Over the decades, numerous expeditions have been launched to find out what really happened to him, his son Jack, and their companion Raleigh Rimmel. Yet, the Amazon does not give up its secrets easily. The dense jungle, filled with deadly creatures, treacherous rivers, and hostile tribes, has swallowed many who dared to follow in Fawcett's footsteps. Rumors and conflicting accounts have only deepened the mystery. Some reports claimed that Fawcett had been killed by an uncontacted tribe. Others suggested he had succumbed to illness or starvation. But then, in the 1950s, a shocking claim emerged. A Swiss explorer named Orlando Villas-Boas reported meeting an indigenous group that claimed Fawcett had been executed for offending their chief. According to their account, the British explorer and his companions were speared to death and their bones thrown into the river. Yet, no conclusive evidence was ever found. Theories about Fawcett's fate have ranged from the plausible to the bizarre. Some have suggested that he discovered a hidden civilization and chose to stay there, abandoning the outside world. Others believe he may have been held captive by a tribe, living out his final years deep in the Amazon, unable or unwilling to return. More fantastical theories propose that he stumbled upon an interdimensional gateway or a secret society that kept him from ever returning. While these ideas stretch the limits of credibility, they show how deeply the mystery has captured the imagination of explorers and storytellers alike. Adding to the enigma, in the 1990s, a new lead surfaced. A researcher studying Fawcett's letters and reports suggested that his search for the city of Z might not have been as doomed as previously thought. Some experts believe that rather than a grand lost city, Fawcett may have been looking for evidence of an advanced Amazonian civilization. In recent years, archaeologists have uncovered massive geometric earthworks in the Amazon, suggesting that complex societies thrived there long before European explorers arrived. Could it be that Fawcett was right all along, but never lived to see his theories proven? Despite the danger, modern explorers and thrill-seekers continue to venture into the Amazon, hoping to solve the mystery once and for all. But the jungle remains as unforgiving as ever, and many who have gone searching for Fawcett have either disappeared themselves or returned with more questions than answers. Even today, the legend of Percy Fawcett and the lost city of Z refuses to fade, standing as a chilling reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. Deep within the lush, uncharted jungles of Guatemala, there's a discovery that continues to baffle archaeologists, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike. It's a discovery that, when it surfaced in the mid-20th century, seemed too incredible to be true. But the story of the Stoneheads of Guatemala is one that has continued to grow in intrigue, surrounded by strange happenings, dark legends, and theories that stretch the boundaries of what we understand about ancient history. It all began in the 1950s, when a stone head was uncovered in the remote jungle of the Guatemalan Highlands. What made this discovery so unusual was not just its massive size, but the peculiar features of the face. Unlike any other sculptures from the indigenous civilizations of Central America, the face depicted on this stone was strikingly European, its features unlike anything seen in the region's well-documented ancient history. The face had sharp, almost angular features, a long nose, and a pronounced brow, with deeply carved eyes that seemed almost lifelike. The most shocking detail, however, was the skull. The stone head featured an elongated skull, something that didn't fit the common image of the indigenous people from that time. It looked like something taken out of an ancient European portrait, not an artifact from a Mesoamerican civilization. In a region rich with Mayan and Olmec culture, this discovery didn't fit the narrative, and many were left to wonder, who made this and when? The head's discovery didn't immediately create the stir one might expect from an artifact of such mystery. At first, it was simply cataloged as part of a growing collection of ancient stones that were being unearthed in the region. But as time passed, reports of additional stone heads began to surface, each one with similar traits: European features, elongated skulls, and facial expressions that defied the common style of known Mesoamerican carvings. Some archaeologists began to theorize that these heads might be remnants of an unknown civilization, perhaps a lost people whose influence had been wiped out by time or natural disaster. Then, in 1955, a startling report surfaced from a local excavator working in the area. According to his account, several stone heads had been unearthed at a site deep within the jungle. The most striking of these heads had been stored away in a nearby museum, but the other heads and the rest of the site were quickly and mysteriously destroyed by local authorities. This sudden and unexplained destruction raised more than a few eyebrows. Was this a simple case of mishandled archaeology, or was there something more to the story? Some believe that the government or military had intervened to suppress the discovery, possibly because of the peculiar features of the stone heads. Others suggest that forces much more powerful than local authorities were at play. Soon after the heads were discovered, locals in the region began to report strange occurrences in the jungle surrounding the site. Mysterious illnesses, sudden deaths, and strange animals were said to be drawn to the area. Some villagers even claimed to hear whispers in the trees or voices calling out in the night, saying that the gods or spirits of the jungle were angry with the intrusion into their sacred land. These reports only fueled the rumors that the stoneheads of Guatemala were cursed, guardians of a forgotten secret, perhaps even a lost civilization whose time had come and gone long before the indigenous tribes of the region had ever settled there. Rumors of the heads spread quickly beyond the borders of Guatemala. In the years following the discovery, archaeologists and treasure hunters from around the world made pilgrimages into the jungle, hoping to get a glimpse of these enigmatic stone faces. Some came seeking to uncover lost histories, while others, driven by greed, hoped to find something far more valuable than an artifact. The jungle, however, was a merciless place, and many of those who ventured in search of the stone heads never returned. There were whispers that the heads weren't the only things hidden in the jungle. One particular myth that caught fire was the belief that the stone heads of Guatemala were part of a much larger network of ancient ruins, some kind of temple complex or lost city built by a civilization that had vanished long before the Mayans rose to prominence. The speculation surrounding these stone heads grew with every passing year, and soon they became the focal point of stories, legends, and even occult practices. One of the most tantalizing aspects of the story was the mention of a curse. Local folklore suggested that the gods of the ancient civilization that created the stoneheads had cursed the region, warning that anyone who disturbed the sacred site would suffer terrible consequences. There were tales of people who had ventured into the jungle to retrieve the heads and were never heard from again, and others claimed that the spirits of the ancient civilization would exact vengeance on those who dared to disturb their sacred land. Could these stoneheads truly be the remains of an ancient people who had mastered a form of magic or power so great that their influence could still be felt centuries later? Over time, as more explorers and scientists ventured into the jungle, the question became not just about the stone heads themselves, but about their origins. Were they made by the ancient Olmecs, the Maya, or some other civilization that had come before them? And why were the features so strikingly European? Could this be proof of ancient contact between the Old World and the New World long before the time of Columbus? There are theories that suggest the heads were created by a forgotten civilization that sailed across the Atlantic, perhaps even a civilization that was much more advanced than previously thought. At the same time, the mystery deepened. As archaeologists and treasure hunters scoured the jungle for any sign of these stone heads, reports of odd phenomena and strange occurrences continued to pour in. Some explorers claimed to have found the site, only to be forced to turn back by unexplained forces. Others spoke of mysterious lights in the jungle, flickering in the distance as though someone or something was watching them. The sense of an unseen presence guarding the secrets of the jungle only added to the mystique of the stoneheads of Guatemala. But the biggest mystery of all remained. What had happened to the original stoneheads? Why were they destroyed so suddenly, and who was responsible for their disappearance? Were they taken by the government to be hidden away in secret locations? Or did something more supernatural prevent their preservation? The curse, some believe, is still at work, and the truth behind the stoneheads may never fully come to light. As we dive deeper into the second part of this story, we'll explore the wild theories and hidden truths that may reveal the full scope of the mystery. Could these stone heads be linked to an ancient lost civilization that left a mark on the Americas long before the time of the Incas, Mayans, or Aztecs? Or is there an even darker force at play, one that may have been attempting to keep the truth hidden for centuries? As we continue to explore the mystery of the stone heads of Guatemala, we are confronted with an even deeper enigma: the origins of the heads themselves and the purpose they served. The theories surrounding these stone faces are as varied and intriguing as the jungle they were found in. To begin with, the most popular theory among those who have studied the heads is that they were created by an ancient civilization, possibly predating the well-known cultures of the Maya, Olmec, or Aztec. The faces on the stone heads, with their sharp European-like features, have led some experts to believe that these could be the remnants of an advanced, pre-Columbian civilization that has been lost to history. Some speculate that these ancient people might have had contact with Europeans long before the age of exploration. One of the most captivating aspects of the stone heads is the debate about their intended purpose. Was this a purely artistic endeavor, or was there something more mystical and ritualistic behind the stone carvings? One theory posits that the heads were used for ceremonial purposes, perhaps as guardians of a sacred site, or as representations of deities. There's even the idea that the heads could have been part of a larger temple complex, designed to honor powerful gods or forces that controlled the jungle. Some anthropologists have drawn parallels between the stone heads and other mysterious artifacts from around the world, particularly those that feature elongated skulls. The Olmec civilization, for example, is known for their colossal stone heads, which may have been linked to their religious beliefs. But the stone heads of Guatemala seem to take this idea a step further. Their elongated skulls and European-like features suggest the possibility of a civilization that was culturally distinct from other known groups in the region. Some even hypothesize that the heads could be representations of extraterrestrial visitors, beings who once walked the earth and left behind these strange markers of their presence. But what about the curse that surrounds the stone heads? It's a critical piece of the legend, one that has persisted in the stories told by locals and visitors alike. According to those who believe in the curse, disturbing the heads or seeking to understand their true origins brings a series of misfortunes, mysterious deaths, illnesses, and strange happenings. Over the years, countless explorers have ventured into the jungle, hoping to uncover the truth behind the stone faces, but many of them have disappeared without a trace, adding an eerie layer to the mystery. The curse, some believe, was placed on the heads by the ancient civilization that crafted them. According to local folklore, these civilizations were not simply skilled artisans. They were thought to have a deep connection to the spiritual world, wielding powers that many considered to be otherworldly. They built these stone heads not just as representations of their gods, but also as a means of protecting sacred knowledge from outsiders. These stone faces, some argue, are not just artifacts. They are the keys to unlocking secrets that have been hidden for centuries. But while the curse is certainly compelling, there's another theory that suggests the strange happenings surrounding the stone heads might be more psychological than supernatural. After all, the jungle itself is a treacherous place. It's filled with dense foliage, dangerous animals, and unpredictable weather. Could the repeated disappearances of explorers be a result of the harsh conditions in the jungle, combined with the psychological pressure of being in such an isolated, unknown place? Could the legend of the curse simply be a result of these explorers' minds playing tricks on them as they succumb to the stress of their environment? Then, of course, there's the question of the government's involvement. The initial destruction of the site in the 1950s, followed by the removal of the stone heads, is a detail that has not gone unnoticed. Was the suppression of the discovery simply a bureaucratic move, or was there something more sinister at play? Some suggest that the heads may have been hidden away by the government to prevent the truth from coming to light, possibly because it could challenge conventional histories, or because the heads could be linked to an ancient power that modern authorities did not want to unleash. Others believe that the heads were taken by a secret society or an organization with knowledge of the ancient mysteries of the world, whose members had an interest in keeping these truths concealed. One of the most fascinating pieces of evidence in this mystery comes from the discovery of other strange artifacts in the same region. In addition to the heads, explorers have claimed to find other curious items, including carved stones, ancient tools, and remnants of a once thriving civilization that had long been forgotten. Could these finds point to a lost civilization that spanned the Americas? Or are they simply the remnants of a small tribe that was wiped out by time, disease, or conquest? Adding even more fuel to the fire is the theory that these stone heads may have been deliberately hidden by the ancient peoples who made them. The idea of a hidden city or temple complex in the jungle is something that's been part of the region's lore for centuries. Local legends tell of an ancient people who built massive structures deep in the jungle, only to vanish without a trace. These people, according to the stories, were the keepers of powerful secrets, secrets that could change the course of history. The stone heads, some argue, could be markers for a much larger site, waiting to be uncovered by those brave enough to venture into the heart of the jungle. Yet, despite all the theories and stories, no one truly knows what happened to the stone heads of Guatemala. Some believe they were taken by archaeologists and hidden away in museums, locked behind secure doors, never to be seen by the public again. Others believe that they were destroyed, lost to time in the jungle, leaving nothing but whispers of their existence behind. In the end, the mystery of the stone heads remains unsolved. The heads themselves still haunt the minds of those who dare to venture into the jungles of Guatemala, and the legend of the curse continues to grow. Whether they were crafted by an ancient civilization, aliens, or even some forgotten race of people, the stone heads stand as a testament to the secrets that still lie hidden in the heart of the jungle. And who knows? Perhaps one day the jungle will reveal its secrets, and the world will finally uncover the truth behind the mysterious stone heads of Guatemala. But until then, the curse, the legends, and the mystery will remain, a haunting reminder that some secrets are meant to be kept hidden forever. In 1585, the English, led by Sir Walter Raleigh, attempted to establish a permanent colony on the shores of North America. They chose a location on Roanoke Island, situated in what is now the state of North Carolina. This was part of an ambitious plan to establish a stronghold in the New World, which could potentially rival the growing Spanish Empire. The settlers arrived with high hopes and expectations, yet their fate would become one of the most baffling mysteries in history. Roanoke Island was chosen for its strategic location, with easy access to the sea and surrounding resources. The first group of settlers, led by Ralph Lane, faced immediate hardships. The native tribes in the area, though initially somewhat welcoming, became increasingly hostile due to the settlers' demands and encroachment on their land. The English settlers struggled with the harsh conditions, lacking the necessary skills and resources to thrive in the unfamiliar environment. They also suffered from poor leadership and constant tensions with the indigenous populations. In 1587, a second group of settlers arrived on Roanoke Island, this time led by John White, an experienced explorer and artist. White's group included not only soldiers and craftsmen, but also women and children, marking the first English colony in the New World to have families. White was tasked with establishing a more permanent settlement and strengthening ties with the local tribes. However, the situation on Roanoke Island remained fraught with difficulty. Relations with the natives were unstable, and food supplies quickly dwindled. After just a few months on the island, White made the difficult decision to return to England to gather more supplies. This decision would prove to be disastrous. He left behind a colony of 115 people, including his daughter and granddaughter. He promised to return quickly, but unforeseen circumstances delayed his voyage. When White finally returned to Roanoke in 1590, he was shocked to find the settlement completely abandoned. Not a single settler was left behind. The homes were gone, and there was no sign of any of the people who had once lived there. The only clue left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a post, and Croatoan was the name of a nearby island inhabited by a local tribe. However, there was no further indication as to what had happened to the colonists. White had no way of knowing whether the settlers had been attacked by natives, had relocated to Croatoan Island, or met some other fate. It's important to note that this was not an isolated event in history. Throughout the world, early explorers often faced hardships and disappeared for various reasons, but the complete disappearance of an entire colony is far more mysterious. One theory that has been proposed is that the settlers moved to Croatoan Island for safety. The carved word could suggest they were trying to leave a message for White upon his return, or that they had been forced to leave in the face of dwindling supplies or threats from neighboring tribes. The Croatoans themselves might have taken the settlers in, though historical records suggest that the indigenous people were not particularly welcoming to Europeans at this time. Another theory points to the possibility of a violent attack. The settlers may have been massacred by a hostile tribe or by the Spanish, who were also active in the region at the time. Some historians suggest that the Spaniards, jealous of English attempts to establish a colony in the New World, may have attacked and wiped out the Roanoke settlers. Others believe that the settlers, starving and desperate, may have turned on each other or perished from disease. The idea of cannibalism has also been raised. Some reports from early explorers in the region mention the practice among desperate groups, though there's no concrete evidence that this occurred at Roanoke. Still, it's a chilling thought that the colonists could have resorted to such drastic measures as their food supplies ran out. A third possibility, one that continues to intrigue modern historians, is that the settlers somehow integrated into the local tribes. The Croatoans, after all, were known to be a relatively peaceful group, and there's some evidence to suggest that some English settlers may have lived among them in the years following the disappearance. In fact, John White himself believed this was the most likely explanation. He reported that when he encountered a group of Croatoan natives, they appeared to have European features, such as lighter skin and facial features. However, no solid evidence has been found to confirm this theory, and it's still a subject of debate. Perhaps the most compelling part of the mystery lies in the complete absence of any further signs of the lost colonists. Despite numerous expeditions over the years to search for evidence, no traces of the settlers have ever been conclusively found. The only potential evidence comes from later reports of sightings of European-looking individuals among native tribes, but this could be attributed to misidentification or the blending of cultures over time. Some historians argue that the absence of records from the time, along with the lack of reliable evidence, suggests that the disappearance of Roanoke may have been a myth altogether. However, the real mystery lies in the unanswered question. Why were the settlers gone without a trace, and what happened to them? When you start to examine the details of the Roanoke colony's disappearance, the layers of mystery only get deeper. Why did White's return take 3 years instead of 1? What was the significance of the word Croatoan left behind, and why wasn't any sign of struggle found? The answers to these questions have eluded historians, archaeologists, and explorers for centuries. But what if there is more to the story than we know? Could the disappearance of Roanoke be part of a larger, more complex puzzle? In the next part, we'll explore the theories and possible explanations for the vanishing of Roanoke, including the potential connection to other lost colonies and the theories about what could have happened to the settlers of Roanoke. The disappearance of the Roanoke colony has long been a subject of fascination, not only for historians, but for anyone captivated by unsolved mysteries. While the first part of this story focused on the colony's establishment, struggles, and the shocking disappearance of its settlers, the second part dives deeper into the theories that have emerged over the centuries. These theories attempt to explain what happened to the 115 men, women, and children who vanished without a trace. From the idea that they moved to a nearby island to the possibility of an attack by hostile tribes, the truth remains elusive. One theory that has persisted over time is that the settlers moved to Croatoan Island, which was located just off the coast of Roanoke Island. As we mentioned earlier, the only clue left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a post. This word was associated with the Croatoan tribe, a group of indigenous people who lived on the island. Some believe that the settlers left the island to escape their deteriorating conditions, and that they moved to Croatoan Island for safety. But if this is the case, why did White fail to find any evidence of them when he returned in 1590? There are a few explanations for this. One possibility is that the settlers did indeed relocate to Croatoan Island, but when White arrived, he could not find them because they had moved again or integrated too seamlessly into the Croatoan tribe. Perhaps the settlers lived among the Croatoans for several years before fading into the background, adopting the ways of the indigenous people. Some reports from later explorers mention that a few natives in the area appeared to have European features, which could suggest that the settlers had intermarried with the indigenous people, though this theory remains speculative. But even if this scenario is plausible, there are still several unanswered questions. For one, why would the settlers carve the word Croatoan if they were simply trying to hide their presence from White? And why did they leave no other clues behind? Surely they would have left behind some sign of life, or at least a hint that they had moved to Croatoan Island. Another theory that gained traction in the years following the colony's disappearance is that the settlers were attacked by hostile indigenous tribes. Relations between the English settlers and the local tribes were far from peaceful. The settlers had engaged in various conflicts with the native tribes, some of which escalated into violence. Furthermore, the settlers had limited knowledge of how to survive in such an unfamiliar and hostile environment, which could have made them easy targets for raids. But while it's true that tensions between the settlers and the indigenous tribes were high, no evidence has ever been found to suggest that the colony was destroyed in a violent attack. When White returned, he found no signs of a battle or any indication that the settlers had been killed in such a manner. If the settlers had been wiped out by indigenous groups, there would likely have been remnants of their belongings, such as weapons or tools, left behind. Yet, nothing was found to explain what had happened to the colony. Furthermore, the Croatoan tribe, while not completely peaceful, had a history of peaceful relations with the English, and it is possible they did not engage in violence against the settlers at all. Even if there were hostile tribes nearby, it's difficult to imagine a massacre occurring without any physical evidence of such an event. Another possibility, one that has surfaced more recently, is that the settlers may have been victims of disease. In the late 16th century, disease was one of the greatest threats to early colonies. The settlers at Roanoke Island were not immune to the tropical diseases carried by mosquitoes or to illnesses introduced by European contact, such as smallpox and typhus. It's possible that the settlers were weakened by disease, which could have led to their deaths. If this happened, It would explain why no trace of their bodies or remains was found when White returned to the island. The settlers may have died in large numbers, leaving the colony abandoned in a state of disrepair. However, while disease could explain the sudden disappearance of a colony, it doesn't explain the missing clues. If the settlers had died from disease, why would they have carved the word Croatoan into a post? Wouldn't they have been too weak to leave such a message? Additionally, there's no evidence of mass graves or any other signs that a deadly illness had swept through the colony. Without solid evidence, this theory, like the others, remains speculative at best. Yet another theory involves the settlers turning to cannibalism in an effort to survive. This might sound macabre, but it was not unheard of in times of extreme desperation. Historians have pointed to reports of cannibalism among other early colonial settlements during times of famine. If the settlers were starving and faced with little hope of survival, they may have resorted to desperate measures. However, there is no concrete evidence to suggest that this occurred at Roanoke. Furthermore, there were no signs of human remains or skeletal evidence to support this theory. It's possible that such an event could have occurred without leaving any trace, but it seems unlikely. Some historians believe that the settlers of Roanoke may have simply abandoned the island and dispersed to other parts of the New World. This idea is based on the possibility that the colonists were able to find refuge in nearby areas, possibly in the vast interior of what would later become the United States. There have been occasional reports of English-looking individuals among Native American tribes, which may have been the descendants of the Roanoke settlers. These reports have sparked speculation that the settlers did not die but rather integrated into the local tribes, disappearing into the wilderness and living out their lives without ever being discovered. This theory gains some support from the fact that there were few permanent settlements in the region at the time. The Roanoke settlers might have realized that their chances of survival were slim if they stayed in one place, so they moved on to other areas where they could find resources, either integrating with indigenous tribes or living off the land. Yet, despite these theories, no one has ever found conclusive evidence to prove that the settlers survived or that they moved elsewhere. The question remains, what happened to the people of Roanoke? Why did they vanish without a trace? For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and explorers have speculated about their fate, but the mystery remains unsolved. The disappearance of Roanoke continues to fascinate us, as it taps into our curiosity about the unknown and our longing to uncover the truth behind one of history's greatest enigmas. Whether the settlers moved to Croatoan Island, were killed by hostile tribes, or vanished into the wilderness, the story of Roanoke is a testament to the dangers and uncertainties faced by early explorers. It also serves as a reminder that sometimes we may never know the full story. The colony's disappearance remains one of the most perplexing and enduring mysteries in American history, and despite the many theories and speculations, we are still left with more questions than answers.